Thank you, Justina, for joining in. Uh, Thank you, Bright, for joining in. Thank you, Elvis, for joining in. And if you just join in, please could you share? Thank you, Echo, for joining in. If you just tune in, please just share, and so that we got more people to tune in. And thank you, Andrew, to join in. And if you just join in, just share so that we have more people joining us. And here again, my name is Funton Daniel. I will be speaking here live from this great nation's United States. And thank all of you for just joining in. Here again, my name is Funton Daniel. Thank you, all of you, for tuning in. And if you just join in, please just share so that we have more people to join us. And if you're here in the United States, just indicate where you are here in the United States. If you're somewhere in Europe, which this message is specifically dedicated to the people of Europe. And if you are in Europe and you're probably heading to bed, maybe it's time for you to wake up. And thank you, all of you that is joining me this live for this message. And if you are in ground zero, just indicate ground zero or wherever in ground zero. If you are in La Republique, just indicate where you are in La Republique. And if you're somewhere in any part of Africa, just indicate exactly where you are in Africa. If you're in South Africa, you're in Nigeria, you're in Ghana, you're in Ivory Coast, wherever you are, just indicate below where you are. And I want to take a moment to thank all of you that are tuned in this evening. Or is here is 1:25 p.m. Here in the great state of Texas. I don't know whatever time you are. And if you are in China, if you are in Europe, you're in Russia, wherever you are, or if you are here in the United States, just briefly indicate below where you are here in the United States. I want to take a moment to thank all of you that are tuned in this afternoon. And the one thing I want you to understand is that uh, you can always get in touch with me through Facebook, through Twitter account, and through YouTube. And you can always watch me after the program. And I want to take a moment to thank all of you that are just tuning in. And here again, my name is Funton Daniel. I will be speaking from the great state of Texas. And the message of today is those in Europe. Stay tuned. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Genevieve. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Matthias, for tuning in. Uh, all right. Thank you, all of you. If you remember to leave me a message below that where you are, and I want to take a moment to thank all of you, all the Southern Cameroon. And it is very amazing how we have become a slavery, despite the fact that we are a sovereign nations, and now we become a slave under La République du Cameroon. It is very fantastic how a free nation becomes slave But that's what we're going to be discussing about. And get to stay tuned. And once again, my name is Funton Daniel. I am speaking from this great nations, United States. And stay tuned. I will be joining you. And before we proceed, let's listen to our Southern Cameroon national anthem. You go.
We rise and not fall. Yeah, we know nation, for you guys are holy. Glory, glory, glory to the Father, for making you a nation that joy forevermore. Ambaazonian, land of freedom, you shall hear it dancing in harmony. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of His nation. Ambaazonian, land of freedom, you shall hear it dancing in harmony. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of His nation.
I want to take a moment to thank all of you that are tuning in. Today, we have very, very important things that we have to talk about. And I wanted this message is for those in entire continental Europe. Those in entire continental Europe. If you are in Europe, if you are in entire continental of Europe, you have right now tune for your get your ticket to London. Get what? Get your ticket to London because that brutal dictator is heading to the Buckingham Palace. And so I am speaking here in United States, and I am speaking here in these great nations, United States, that if you live in the entire continental state of Europe, get your ticket and it should be your way to the Buckingham Palace on the 14th. That evil dictatorship is heading to Buckingham Palace, and the wall is cast. And get this message: if you have to take an off day on the 14th to the 20th, should be your vacation. If you are from the Southern Cameroon and you understand the magnitude of this crisis, get your ticket because this evil dictatorship that is heading to the Buckingham Palace must sign affidavit of relinquish Southern Cameroon territory. Get your ticket now if you live in the entire continental state of Europe. Before we proceed, I want to take a moment to thank this great nation, the United States. You know, there is one thing that many of you are not aware of these great nations. United States is the most admired country on earth. I know you may not have been to here in these nations. It is a country that is governed and it is ruled by law and it is highly respected. No one is above the law here in these great nations. And I am so proud to be one of the citizens of Southern Cameroon that have got this opportunity to study in these great nations. And I cannot in any moment fail to appreciate the effort of these great nations. And that is why we thank so much to the president of this country, the president of the United States. And we want to take a moment to thank uh, the new Secretary of State who will be confirming at the department, the State Department, the new Secretary of State, will be confirmed by U.S. Congress. And I want to take a moment to thank the United States Congress. I want to take a moment to thank the U.S. Senate. I want to take a moment to thank the U.S. Department of Defense. I want to take a moment to thank all these great people, men and women of these great nations. But I want to let them understand that the Southern Cameroon territory, that I continue to speak up about this Southern Cameroon territory, that the citizens are now living in the forest against the worst and the brutal evil dictatorship in entire continent of this world that we breathe this natural air. The worst of these is Paul Biya, that is that of this Cameroon. And right now that I'm speaking, many citizens of the Southern Cameroon are either living in the forest, and many of them have been bitten by mosquitoes. They don't even have a single food to eat. At least right now, there is at least 60,000 citizens of Southern Cameroon in Nigeria. And they live on a single meal in 24 hours. Then you can understand the painful that these citizens of Southern Cameroon are going through. And yet, these architects that is causing havoc in the Southern Cameroon citizens is now traveling to London. And what is the significance of his going to London? That he is the leaders of the Southern Cameroon. And yet we have leaders of the Southern Cameroon that are in jail and no access to lawyers, to their family, and to nobody else. And he's heading to London. But I am speaking here in this great nation, United States. I'm asking all the citizens of Southern Cameroon that are currently in Europe. You have today, the 14th, you must have your ticket and head to the Buckingham Palace in London. Paul Biya must sign an affidavit to relinquish the power that Southern Cameroon is not longer the territory of the Republic of Cameroon. All nations that got their independence, they have already materialized their nations, but yet Southern Cameroon is still the only nations that got independent in 1961, and yet till today, they haven't been able to manage their affairs. They have been moving from one brutal dictatorship to the next brutal dictatorship, despite the fact that Southern Cameroon was the only nation in West Africa that has exhibited exemplary democratic form of government. Southern Cameroon is the only country in West Africa that has exercised exemplary democratic form of government. When they are witnessing an elected president transfer power from one elected officials to the next, and no country has exercised within that length of period. Remember, when the Southern Cameroon was in Enugu House of Assembly, they have their cabinet that were elected by the citizens and were recognized by United States and were also recognized by Great Britain. And the British administrator at the Enugu House of Assembly in Nigeria witnessed this effort of the Southern Cameroon. And yet today, Southern Cameroon has not been able to exercise that freedom. And that is why I am speaking here in these great nations to fellow American citizens, to fellow United States government, to the fellow U.S. Department of State, and to the U.S. Embassy in Africa. We have the worst corrupted United Nations, and as we speak, I am sure they are here watching. I am sure here they will watch later. I am sure here they will relate them this message. But the Southern Cameroon, right now that I'm speaking here, in Fundong, at least the citizens of Fundong, the Southern Cameroon citizens in Fundong, are not living in the forest. Paul Biya is using military helicopter to bombard this area. What is Fundong? Fundong is mostly people of the grassland area, which means there is no trees as being well shielded like what happened in Manfe. So in Fundong area, they are mostly people of the grassland, which means it is easily accessible to use what form of military helicopter. And that is why citizens of the people of Fundong, as I'm speaking in the northwest region, they have all deserted their homes, and entire hospitals are being crushed. It is absolutely ridiculous to see someone that has no power over the people of Southern Cameroon. Southern Cameroon has the same United Nations that granted La République du Cameroon independence. It is the same body that granted the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon. And yet the people of Southern Cameroon has not in any single, has their freedom exercised by the citizens of Southern Cameroon. And yet we have the worst United Nations here in the United States. And I can't believe that United States, where freedom reign, but the citizens of Southern Cameroon has not got their freedom reign. I am bringing this attention not only to the United States citizens. I am bringing to the United States Congress. I'm bringing to the United States Senate. I am bringing this to the U.S. Department of Defense. While I am still speaking here, U.S. Department of Defense has military attaché in Africa. They can testify on the Congress, U.S. Congress, whether Southern Cameroon is still a colonial territory of the Republic of Cameroon. It is absolutely amazing that citizens cannot live their happily life, but they have to be invaded by someone that claims ownership of Southern Cameroon. And today he's heading to the Buckingham Palace. I have a good news to the British Prime Minister that as you continue to tolerate, and the citizens of Southern Cameroon has grown out of patience. And we understand that the value that we cherish is from the Great Britain, and that with the value and the form of democratic form of government we share from the Buckingham Palace. We share this value, and we not only in the United States and elsewhere of the Anglo-Saxon heritage, we believe in these fundamental principles, and we believe that Paul Biya is heading to the Buckingham Palace. He must sign an affidavit of relinquishment. Paul Biya must sign an affidavit of relinquishment that he is no longer part of the Southern Cameroon, and that the citizens of Southern Cameroon has the upper hand to decide the future of that country, and not Paul Biya in any moment or in any aspect. United Nations voted for the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon, and the same United Nations voted for the sovereignty of the Republic of Cameroon. And yet, Southern Cameroon is the only country that has not in any form materialized respect their sovereignty. Why should the people in Guinea, why should the people of Com be living in the forest? Under no circumstances should the Republic of Cameroon ever justify claim over the Southern Cameroon. Southern Cameroon has the legal authority to defend the sovereignty of its territory. Paul Biya has no legal authority over the Southern Cameroon. The world community just remains silent, and he is brutalizing citizens and murdering, slaughtering them. And today he's heading to the Buckingham Palace in Great Britain and undermine the value of the citizens of the Southern Cameroon. But I have a good news that as we breathe this natural air in this great nation of the United States, we are making this message, a strong message, that Buckingham Palace, as you welcome him, he must sign an affidavit of relinquishing his power over the people of Southern Cameroon, because the citizens of Southern Cameroon have the right and obligation to decide who should be able to rule them, and that can only be done through ballot box. That can only be done through a ballot box of the citizens and not La République du Cameroon. And not Republic du Cameroon. Imagine the people of Fundo, the people of Kong, and not a hospital. Imagine the hospital, and the military will slaughtering citizens, going into a hospital. It's never in international community where a military will go into a hospital and pick up patients. Instead, the military takes patients that have been injured to hospitals where they can receive the first aid care. And that is the obligations that any citizen, whether it is the military that is invading a country, it is their obligation to take any wounded officials to the nearest hospital. But I have never read in a history where the military goes into the hospital and pick up the patients and shot them alive in front of the citizens. This is an absolute abomination that the world must investigate. Paul Biya should leave Buckingham Palace and head to the jail rather than returning back to the Republic of Cameroon. I haven't seen the world community remain silent and ignorant as though nothing is happening. As nothing is happening. That is the world we live in. And we have one evil United Nations here in the United States. Here in the United States. If it was China, it wouldn't have bothered me because I understand China is a communist country. They value nothing. They are absolutely disgusting when you speak about China. Or if it was in Russia, you would agree with me that it doesn't matter because Russia is all of the same aspect. That is why Russia is standing with an evil dictatorship of Syria that is using chemical weapons against the innocent citizens. And one asks, what does he worth to the Syrian country? He has absolutely, Ambaazonian has absolutely no value to Syria. And yet Russia is standing behind the evil dictatorship over the sovereignty of the diocese of the Syrians. But we have United Nations. We do not need a visa to travel to United Nations. We do not need U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Congress, U.S. Justice Department. It's not here. They don't need a visa to travel to United Nations, but they need simply make a phone call and they pick the damn, whatever they call, United Nations Secretary General. It is absolutely a nightmare. If Southern Cameroon was voted as a sovereign nation in 1961, are they obligated to their freedom? They have the choice. It is their duty to let La République understand that Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation. The fact that they are cohabiting with the Republic of Cameroon does not give power over La République to decide the destiny. And that is why the citizens are being murdered and slaughtered, and they can't even have a breathing air. But we have an office here in the United States, the most trusted country on earth, the most respected law country on earth. And yet, we have brutal murdering and slaughtering of the citizens of Southern Cameroon. And they are voiceless. And the entire cabinet of the Southern Cameroon was picked up in Nigeria. It doesn't occur to the United Nations to issue a condemnation because they are sluggish to respond. They are too sluggish to respond. And if that's the office that we have, then we need to relinquish them and send them back to their office. And we have a new United Nations officials, and that is capable of doing their job. The purpose of the United Nations was to maintain peace and security, was not to appreciate their personal interests. rather than the interest of this world body. When United Nations was formed, the essence was to ensure peace and security to the entire global continent. And we have a United Nations representative that was voted by acclamations. And that is why the world is in chaos. The world has not witnessed the peace that it was intended to. And that is why Southern Cameroon and the people of Syria are being brutally murdered using what form of chemical? Why the Southern Cameroon brutal dictatorship? And if you look in common, the two are brutal dictatorship. They believe that their power came from God and that they cannot be questioned by anyone on earth. And that is why most of them are being supported by the major power that are the veto power of the United Nations. France for the Republic of Cameroon and Russia for the Syrian brutal dictatorship, Assad. That is the world we live in. And people just ignorance. If France can go to the poll and elect their own president, and yet they support someone that is unelective. And when you ask, they say they are a democratic country. That is the evil that one can ever envisage. Do we need a reform in the United Nations? I think all of us will agree that the current United Nations and its structure and its form need to be redundant and replaced. And we have a more concrete, viable member of the United Nations than this rubbish we have here. It is absolutely a nightmare. Just imagine a nation, a single individual using chemical, the worst chemical, and using it against the citizens. And we have a one veto member of the United Nations standing beside him over the sovereignty of the people of Syria. And that is the country we call they are being governed by the United Nations. And that is the key that has veto power of the United Nations. Does he need to be relinquished of their veto power? I think they do. They need to set up a new organization and give the policy where those with the veto power can be relinquished of their veto power. In that case, we understand that the value and the value of this earth is not for a single individual, it's for collectively all those involved. You cannot have a single individual that citizens are being slaughtering because we have one veto member at the United Nations that ensure his safety. I think the era has long gone that we need to change the dynamic of this world that we live in and that makes it a more viable so that we can appreciate when our time comes that we are about to leave this earth, and then we can appreciate that we have done something than having some individual that is heading an organization that lacks the moral ethics of its obligations. Why the slaughtering is going on in Syria, there is also the similar effect that is going on in the Southern Cameroon territory. And what they have in common is that all of them are the brutal dictatorship. And they have been in power for donkey years. And it doesn't occur to the world that we need to talk about it. And that is why Paul Biya is heading to the Buckingham Palace. And when he asks him, what is his mission to the Buckingham Palace? I am the leader of the Anglophones. I am absolutely disgusted by the international community and that he must leave there and head to the Geneva jail cell before he can until he be judged and sentenced. We have reached an era where those perpetrators ought to be punished. Why should he be in power for 36 years? Does it mean that all the La Republic, no one is educated enough? No one is intelligent enough? No one has attended all the highest level of education enough to become the president of the Republic of Cameroon? Why should a single individual should be in power for 36 years? What a mindful, disgusting. Imagine you have 60,000 people living without food in a country where they are self-sufficient in both agricultural productions. They are hardworking and they are living on a single meal per day in Nigeria. And the cabinet has been adopted. And someone called communication minister and standing and said the people are living fabulous life in prison, the Southern Cameroon. What a wonderful, what a sad coincidence. But I am calling on the US government. I'm calling on the State Department. I know the State Department is still installing. I know the State Department is still installing and they're still waiting the confirmation of the US Congress. But I am presenting this case to the State Department that as you remain silent and the slaughtering of the Southern Cameroon citizens, maybe the US Embassy is not aware or the US Embassy is romancing with the Republic of Cameroon. But it is time that US here in the United States need to step up. If the US Embassy in Yaoundé is romancing with the regime, but I am asking the State Department to oversight that ruling, because once an embassy is on stand, it means an embassy is represent the United States. And United States Embassy has no fear of favor wherever they are and how they operate. And if that embassy is not capable to report to the United States exactly the genocide going, or they are reporting and someone is not capable, then I am asking Congress to investigate whether should the Southern Cameroon be murdered. Because I understand this United States is the best country on earth, and they stand for liberty and freedom. It is not by magic that God made this country as the leaders of the free world. And if the United States remains silent, and why the evil murdering of the citizens elsewhere, and we are calling those here in the United States that the Southern Cameroon are in distress call and they need help from the United States. I understand the State Department is still installing the new Secretary of State and is still waiting for confirmation. And I am presenting this case of the Southern Cameroon territory that are going through a distress call and that they need help of the United States. Just imagine Southern Cameroon. They got their independence by 64 votes to 23. And yet today they're still suffering. They don't have no liberty. They have freedom have been suppressed. They have one brutal dictatorship that has been in power for 36 years. God Almighty, help us. And I want to thank those in Europe. You have a duty. And that duty, you must be heading to the Buckingham Palace on the 14th to the 20th. If that is your vacation, then it is time to take your vacation and be heading to the Buckingham Palace. If that is the only time you have, take it now and be heading. If you are in France, if you are in Germany, if you are in Switzerland, if you are in Belgium, wherever you are and you are Southern Cameroon citizens, if you are in Holland, if you are in Poland, you are in all those areas that you are a Southern Cameroon citizens, then the one-way traffic should be heading to the Buckingham Palace because the time is scarce. Paul Biya must sign an affidavit before he departed from London. It is enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Why can the citizens of Southern Cameroon have to manage their own country? Why should they be a subject of another country to manage their territory? Are they not capable? Are they not educated enough? What do you want them to do? This message is for the citizens of Southern Cameroon in Europe, entire continental of Europe. You are one-way ticket to London and head to the Buckingham Palace from the 14th to the 20th. That is where the evil dictatorship is heading to. And so your one-way traffic should be heading to the Buckingham Palace. That era has gone, and he must sign an affidavit that he is relinquishing Southern Cameroon territory before he departs from London. That is the clear message. You can imagine the citizens are suffering. The citizens are living in the forest. The citizens, I don't even know. And one asks, who is La Republique in the Southern Cameroon, for God's sake? Who is La Republique, for God's sake? Who is La Republique, for God's sake? Why should the citizens be living in the forest of someone you invited to your home? Just imagine you invite someone to visit you and you provide him a bed, and that is where you're going to be sleeping. And in the middle of the night, he overthrown you and deciding that you no longer own that house. What a miraculous change of event. But that event is cast, and we must stand firmly, and we must get rid of the Republic of Cameroon out of our territory, and we must do this, and we must do this now. We must do this now. We must do this now. You cannot imagine that when you get up in the middle of the day, what you listen is that your brothers have been shot dead. When you get up in the middle of the night, your sister has been trampled to death. You get in the middle of the day, what you see is a corpse lying on the street. When you get up in the middle of the night, you see a corpse lying in the street. When you get up in the middle of the night, you see this individual shot. You get in the middle of the night, you find someone in prison. You get in the middle of the night, you find someone in this. And one asks, who is the Republic of Cameroon, for Christ's sake? Who is the Republic of Cameroon, for Christ's sake? And yet we have an embassy that is in the Republic of Cameroon, and they remain silent. And it's okay for the evil dictatorship to be slaughtering. Just imagine we have an embassy, and those are the embassy of the Western society. It doesn't occur to them that this they need to kick against. They need to verbalize and tell the Republic of Cameroon, this is a citizen of another nation. The fact that we are cohabiting with them, they have the legal right to question every value that they have. And they have no power to question the Southern Cameroon at any moment. And that we have the citizens of the Southern Cameroon. That is not the citizens of La Republique. They have the right, they have the duty to question whether are we in an amicable relationship. Just as the wife can question whether the home he's married to is and the rightful husband, and he can have file for divorce, and we must be able to recognize her wishes. And if we can recognize the wish of a woman to seek for divorce, why can't the sovereign nation file for a divorce? And yet the world community called the embassy are romancing in Yaoundé with the system, and the slaughtering continues. That is the world we live in. But we must discard the leaders of this world, and that they will have an amicable society that are able to stand for obligations. Yes, we must do this. That's what we must do. That is what we must do. You can imagine that when an individual make a call, they say she was shot, and you look on the images on the internet, his murder. You look at it, and you find an army slaughtering a citizen. An army slaughtering a citizen, for Christ's sake. That is the government that one can envisage. And he doesn't call that we have a United Nations office here in the United States. That is pathetic. That is absolutely pathetic. That we have a United Nations office, head office here in the United States. The head office here in the United States. And we have a military that is slaughtering the citizens of the Southern Cameroon and in an open daylight and showing it. Doesn't want the world to take a look at. And we have an embassy that they cannot denounce it. They cannot stand and say no, because they are the complicity of that brutal dictatorship. Because as you become the complicity of that brutal dictatorship, there is no way you can denounce it. But we must rise and stand and ask the world community that the era of the 60s that people were living in silence has long gone, and that we are in a new era where people are valued. This is the document that was signed by United Nations. This is the document. And it is not an obligation. They cannot voice their concern and issue a condemnation. They are waiting for another country to issue a condemnation before they can talk about it. I don't want to even call the word African Unity or Organization for Africa, because they are the rubbish people, and that we need to escalate them and crucify them and get a new body called African Responsible Society that are able to understand the value and able to fight for any evil dictatorship in the continent of Africa. Africa has grown up, but yet they are not grown up maturely. They are still brain dead. Called African Organization of African Unity, OAU. That is led by the brain dead. They don't understand the value and the purpose of the organizations. But Africa must rise and excommunicate those OAU, whatever they call, and get a new leadership that are more responsible. That is the world we need to build. We don't need somebody to tell them, because they are absolutely a ridiculous organizations. Imagine, it is very, very important that I read this. It is very important that I read this. United Nations Resolution 1608 SV, 21st April 1961. United Nations General Assembly 994 plenary meeting, Friday, 21st April 1961 at 3 p.m. in New York, here in the United States. The United Nations 15th General Assembly President, Frederick Boland of Ireland. The Vice President, Xian of China. And Rapporteur, Boeing of Denmark. Those is the same executive organization as the current executive as we live now. That was the executive organization at the time in 1961, and the same executive at the moment we live now. And therefore, if other nations were accepted by this resolution, why can the current United Nations retroactively respect this resolution and tell the Republic, you need to evacuate that territory? We respect the terms of the 1961 equally as the terms we are implementing now. That should have prevented the crisis that we are experiencing now. But the United Nations are sleeping and cannot raise their voice. That is the organization we are living on in this healthy environment, that we have a leader that are people of descended from whatever you call that, mentally and incapacitated. 64 voted for the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon, 23 voted against, and 10 abstained. So if you include those that voted against and those that abstained is still not equal to the number that voted for the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon for Christ's sake. For Christ's sake. Of the 64 nations that voted for the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon, include the following: Honduras, Hungary, Iceland, India, Indonesia, Ireland, Iceland, Japan, Jordan, Laos, Lebanon, Liberia, Libya, Mali, Mexico, Morocco, Nepal, Netherlands, New Zealand, Nigeria, Norway, Pakistan, Philippines, Poland, Romania, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Sweden, Thailand, Tunisia, Turkey, Ukraine, Union of South Africa, Union of Soviet Socialists, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, Great Britain, Northern Ireland, United States of America, voted in 1961 recognizing the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon. Should they be going through this crisis for Christ's sake? Should they? United States, Venezuela, Yemen, Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, Albania, Australia, Austria, Bolivia, Bulgaria, Burma, Belarusia Socialist Republic, Canada, Ceylon, Chile, Costa Rica, Cuba, Cyprus, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Federation of Malaysia, Finland, Ghana, and Guinea. Those are the nations that voted for the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon. And yet, their independence has not materialized. And you have the citizens living in the forest, and the world remains silent. It doesn't occur to them to tell La République how you are genocide in the Southern Cameroon territory. The people have a legitimate right to question your legitimacy. They have the right to their freedom. They have the right to determine what they want, and they have to do so. You have no choice to invade the Southern Cameroon. If United States invaded Iraq because of Kuwait, why should they remain silent over Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation that was invaded by the Republic? Is that not a hypocrisy? Are the world community a hypocrite? You be the judge. And the 23 that voted against the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon includes Israel, Ivory Coast, Luxembourg, Madagascar, Niger, Paraguay, Senegal, Upper Volta, Uruguay, Argentina, Belgium, Brazil, Cambodia, Cameroon, the invader, Central African Republic, Chad, China, Congo, Dahomey, France, Gabon, and Greece. Those are the countries that voted, and including those that are stand against the Southern Cameroon. Yet the Southern Cameroon independence was voted. And so the message is clear. Southern Cameroon is not a colonial territory of La République. Southern Cameroon was never a conquered territory of the Republic of Cameroon. And so he's heading to the Buckingham Palace. But I'm asking all the Southern Cameroon, you have one-way destinations to the Buckingham Palace in Great Britain. And if you live in any continental Europe, your journey is in the great continental of Europe. If you live in Italy, if you live in Turkey, if you live in France, if you live in Germany, if you live in Austria, if you live in all the entire continental Europe, your destination is Buckingham Palace, 14th to the 20th of this month. That is where you should be heading to. And that Paul Biya must sign affidavit of relinquishing the Southern Cameroon. And I want to take a moment to thank all of you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. God bless you.